Hello. Welcome to another video on our channel. Here we translate testimonies of people who have had near-death experiences and other spiritual experiences. Today we will learn about the story of Johann Sturman. He says he saw the earth as a play, and that vision changed everything. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now. Leave a comment with your name and your city. Let's now listen to Johann's testimony. Hey guys, my name is Johann Sturman. I'm 28 years old and I live in Hamburg, Germany. I'm a historian and work at a small local museum. My life was quite ordinary until the night of January 10th, 2014, a date I will never forget. Look, I was always a skeptical guy. I didn't really believe in these things about supernatural experiences or life after death. For me, this was something from movies or people who like to make up stories. But what happened to me that night? Man, it was so real, so intense. It completely changed my outlook on life and death. Before I tell you what happened, I want you to understand that I'm not trying to convince anyone of anything. I just want to share my story because I know it can help other people who have been through something similar or who are afraid of death. And, who knows, make us think a little about how we live our lives, you know? Well, it all started on a Friday night. I had gone out to dinner with my girlfriend, Anna. We were celebrating our anniversary, so it was a very special night. We went back to my apartment, we talked about the future, making plans. When Anna left, I was feeling really good, really happy. I went to sleep peacefully, without even imagining what was about to happen. And that's where things get interesting. So, guys, let me tell you how it all started. I had just gone to bed. I was super relaxed after that great night with Anna. I closed my eyes and, in the blink of an eye, I found myself in a totally different place. It was as if I had entered a dream, but it was so real, so vivid, that I couldn't believe it was just my imagination. I found myself in a dark tunnel, kind of floating, and you weren't alone. I had a lot of people with me, all slowly moving towards the light at the end of the tunnel. You know those movie scenes? Well, it was exactly the same, but the feeling was very different from watching a movie. I could feel the cold air of the tunnel, hear the heavy silence that surrounded us. It was all so real that it was scary. As we walked, I started to realize that something was wrong. My body felt too light, as if I weighed nothing. I looked down and, man, what a shock. I saw my body lying on the bed, still, as if asleep. That's when the penny started to drop. Was I dead? Before I could panic, I heard a voice I hadn't heard in years. It was my grandmother's voice, who had passed away when I was a teenager. She said, very quietly, "We're dead, João." Man, it was like getting punched in the stomach. I didn't want to believe it. But at the same time, I knew it was true. We continued walking through the tunnel, and I started to think about everything I was leaving behind. My family, my friends, my work, my dreams. Everything seemed so far away now. And the crazy thing is that I wasn't afraid. It was more of a feeling of sadness that I had left a lot of things unfinished. As we got closer to the light, I began to feel a peace that I had never felt before. It was as if all the problems, all the worries of life had been left behind. I felt light, free, but at the same time, a part of me still resisted, still wanted to go back. It was a mix of feelings I had never experienced before. As I floated in that tunnel, I started thinking about my life, you know? All those things that we give so much importance to on a daily basis started to seem so meaningless. I remembered my closet full of clothes, my brand new cell phone that I had bought last month, the money I was saving to buy a car. Man, none of that mattered anymore. What really weighed me down were the memories, the knowledge I had acquired, the relationships I had built. I thought about my students, the classes I taught, the conversations we had. Now that seemed to have value. Then there was sadness. I saw my bookshelf full of books that I always said I would read, one day. How many stories, how much knowledge had I missed? I always thought I didn't have time, that I was going to read on vacation, on the weekend. And now there was no more time. I thought about Anna, my family, my friends. How many times had I stopped spending time with them because I was too busy? How many important conversations had I postponed? How many I love yous had I left unsaid? And the worst thing is that I realized that I had spent a good part of my life worrying about things that, in the end, didn't make the slightest difference. Worried about what others would think of me, about having the car of the year, about making more money. It all seems so silly now. It gave me a crazy desire to go back, to do something different, to enjoy every second. From hugging my parents, from telling Anna how much I loved her, from reading all those books, from really listening to my students. But was it too late? At that moment, I understood that life is not about accumulating things, you know? It's about accumulating experiences, knowledge, relationships. It's about making a difference in the lives of those around us. And I had wasted so much time on things that didn't matter. This whole reflection was like a slap in the face. If I had the chance to go back, I would do everything differently. I would give more value to what really matters. But would I have that chance? Suddenly, the scene changed completely. It was as if someone had pressed a button and changed the scene. One moment I was in that dark tunnel. The next I found myself on a giant stage. But it wasn't an ordinary stage. It was like I had been transported to space, you know? And from up there, I could see the entire Earth. Man, what an incredible sight. The Earth seemed so small from there, but at the same time, so full of life, of movement. And then came the craziest part. I started to realize that everything that was happening down there seemed like a big theater play. It was as if each person was an actor, each with their own role. Some were protagonists, others supporting characters, but all were important to the story. I saw people being born, dying, falling in love, fighting, making peace. Everything happening at the same time, as if it were a great choreography. And me? Well, I was just another actor in this giant play. My life, which always seemed so important to me, was just a small act in this immense production. Not that that made her any less important, you know, but it made me see things from a totally different perspective. I realized that we spend our whole lives thinking that we are the center of the universe, that our concerns, our problems are the most important. But seeing everything from above, I understood that we are all part of something much bigger. I kept thinking about all the times I had gotten upset over stupid things, all the fights for stupid reasons, how small it all seemed now. And at the same time, like every act of kindness, every gesture of love seemed to shine. At that moment, I felt a huge desire to say goodbye to the people I loved. I wanted to be able to tell them how important they were, how much a difference they had made in my life. But how to do this? I was there, far from everything and everyone. It was a strange feeling, you know. On the one hand, I felt part of something immense, incredible. On the other hand, I felt small as hell, as if I were just a grain of sand on a giant beach. But I understood that every grain of sand is important. Everyone has their role. This vision completely changed my way of seeing life. I understood that it doesn't matter the size of our role. What matters is how we interpret it. Every action, every word, every gesture can make a huge difference in someone's life. And that, in the end, is what really matters. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more intense, I found myself surrounded by a light so strong, so bright, that I almost couldn't look at it. It was as if the sun had come down there, you know? But the strange thing is that, even though it was so strong, the light didn't hurt. On the contrary, it was welcoming, warm. Guys, let me try to explain what that place was. Imagine the most beautiful place you have ever seen in your life. Now multiply that by 1,000. It still doesn't come close to what I saw. It was what people call the realm of death. But man, there was nothing scary there. It was a place full of love, of joy. The energy there was something I had never felt before. It was as if all the happiness in the world had been concentrated in one place. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't sad. I wasn't worried. Just an absurd peace. The crazy thing is that I felt connected to everything. It was as if I could understand all the mysteries of the universe, as if all the knowledge was there, available to me. I could feel the love of all the people who had ever walked this earth. It was overwhelming, you know. I saw a lot of people who had already left. My grandmother was there, smiling at me. I saw friends I had lost. I saw people I only knew from photos. Everyone seemed happy, at peace. There was no age there. Everyone looked young, full of energy. The music that played was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. It can't be compared to anything we know here on earth. It was as if every note was made of pure love. It made me want to cry. It was so beautiful. And the time? Man, time didn't exist there. It could have been a second or 1,000 years, I couldn't say. Everything seemed eternal and instantaneous at the same time. It was a feeling of freedom I had never experienced before. You know that feeling when you're super happy, like when you receive really good news. Multiply that by 1,000,000. Still, it doesn't come close to what I felt in that place. It was a happiness so pure, so complete, that it's difficult to even explain. There I understood that death is not the end. It's just a passage to something much bigger, much more beautiful than we can imagine. All that peace, that love, that understanding. Man, it was indescribable. If I could choose one word to describe that place, it would be perfection. Even though I was in that incredible place, full of peace and love, I couldn't stop thinking about the people I had left behind. It was like a part of me was still connected to the world of the living, you know? I started thinking about Anna. How would she react when she found out that I had died? We had made so many plans together, talked about marriage, children, and now, who was going to console her? Who was going to be by her side in difficult times? Then I thought about my parents. My God, how would they look? Losing a child must be the worst pain in the world. I imagined my mother crying, my father trying to be strong but destroyed inside, and my younger brother, who would be the example for him now? My students also came to mind. I had promised them that I would help with the projects at the end of the year. Who was going to guide them now? Who was going to encourage them to continue studying, to believe in themselves? And my friends? We had agreed to go on a trip together during our next vacation. Who was going to tell the lame jokes that only I told? Who was going to be the mediator in the discussions? It was a strange feeling, you know. I was in a wonderful place and full of peace, but at the same time I felt bad for having left so much unfinished. So many people who depended on me, who counted on me. I felt a huge desire to communicate with them, to say that I was fine, that they didn't need to suffer for me. I wanted to be able to hug each one, tell them how much I loved them, how important they were. But how to do this? That's when I understood the true meaning of love. It's not just about being together physically. It's about the connection we create with people. A connection that goes beyond life and death. Even there, in that faraway place, I could feel the love I had for them and the love they had for me. At that moment, I wished more than anything I could send them a message, saying that love is the only thing that really matters, that they should enjoy every moment, value every relationship, that life is too short for us to waste time on things that don't matter. As I stood there thinking about everyone I had left behind, I saw something that left me stunned. In front of me, a huge gate appeared. Man, when I say huge, I mean huge. It seemed like it reached the sky, if you can even talk about heaven in that place. That gate, I'll tell you, was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. All craftsmanship, full of incredible details. It seemed like every little piece of it told a story. It had some colors that I didn't even know existed. It shone in a way that was hypnotizing. And the music, my God, the music. A sound was coming from behind the gate so beautiful, so perfect, that it made me want to cry. It was as if all the best musicians in the world had come together to make the most beautiful melody anyone had ever heard. I stood there, standing in front of that gate, not knowing what to do. A part of me really wanted to see what was on the other side. After all, if the gate was already so incredible, imagine what would happen after it, right? But at the same time, I felt like if I went through that gate, there would be no turning back. That's when that doubt struck. Was I really ready for this? To leave everything behind for good? I started thinking about all the things I still wanted to do in life. Marrying Anna, having children, seeing my students graduate, traveling to the places I always dreamed of visiting. And it wasn't just that. I had responsibilities, you know? People who counted on me. My parents were getting old. They were going to need help. My younger brother was still in college. I had promised to help him. What about my students? There were a lot of projects that we were planning to do together. I remained at this impasse, looking at the gate and thinking about my life. It was as if I had to choose between paradise and earth. And, to be honest, it wasn't an easy decision. The gate was too tempting, the music was irresistible. But the idea of leaving everything unfinished, of leaving without saying goodbye, that bothered me a lot. Do you know when you're in a situation that seems like there's no way out? That's how I felt. On the one hand, the promise of eternal peace, of a perfect place. On the other, all the things I still wanted to live, all the people I loved. How to choose. I stood there, standing in front of that gate for what seemed like an eternity, trying to decide what to do, which way to go. It was the hardest moment of this whole experience, I promise you, because I knew that whatever decision I made, it would change everything forever. I was there, in front of that incredible gate, almost letting myself be carried away by the music and the beauty of everything, when suddenly, the image of Anna came into my head. It wasn't just any memory. It was as if I could see her at that exact moment. How could I leave like that without even saying goodbye? That's when I made my decision. As beautiful as that place was, as much peace as I felt there, I couldn't just abandon the people I loved. Not like that. Not without saying goodbye. Not without trying to do more for their lives. I decided I was going to go back, but bro, what a difficult decision. It was as if I had to swim against the strongest current in the world. Every fiber of my being wanted to stay there, wanted to walk through that gate, but I knew I had to go back. As soon as I made that decision, I felt like I was pulled back. It was a strange sensation, as if I were falling from a very high place. Everything became dark again. The music became more and more distant. As I was falling, or coming back, I don't know. I started to feel some strange things. First, there was a pain, as if my whole body had fallen asleep and was now starting to function again. Then came a cold that seemed to freeze my bones. The fall seemed to have no end. I fell and fell and fell. And as I fell, I remembered everything I had seen, everything I had felt. It was as if the entire experience had been compressed into a few seconds. Then, suddenly, bam! I felt like I had hit something. It was such a strong shock that I thought I was going to faint again. But no. Little by little, I started to feel my body again. First the toes, then the legs, the torso, the arms. I opened my eyes slowly, afraid of what I would see. I was back in my room, lying on my bed. I was sweating cold. My heart was beating so hard it felt like it was going to come out of my mouth. But I was alive. He had returned. I stood there, still, trying to understand what had happened. Had it just been a dream? But it was so real, so vivid. No, it couldn't just be a dream. I knew, deep in my heart, that I had experienced something extraordinary, something that would change my life forever. After that crazy experience, guys, my life completely changed. Seriously, it was like I was reborn, you know? I woke up that morning and it was like I was seeing the world for the first time. The first thing I did was call Anna, Man, hearing her voice, I can't even explain what I felt. I asked her to come here to the house. I needed to see her, hug her. When she arrived, I hugged her so tight that I think I scared the poor thing. I told her how much I loved her, how important she was to me. I think she was a little confused, but happy, you know? Then I called my parents and my brother. I spoke to each one of them, told them how much I loved them, how important they were. My mother even asked if I was drunk, but I was sober, but full of love to give. When I returned to work, my students noticed the difference right away. I was more excited, more present. I started paying more attention to each of them, really listening to what they had to say. You know those books I never had time to read? I started reading one a week and sharing what I learned from them. Material things have lost their importance. You know, that car I was dying to buy. I didn't even call anymore. Instead, I started saving money to travel, to see new places, to have experiences. I started to value time more, every second. I stopped postponing important things, leaving conversations that needed to be had for later. If there was something to resolve, I resolved it immediately. If I had something to say, I said it. You know what's crazier? I stopped being afraid of death. Not that I wanted to die, far from it. But that fear we have, that anxiety, that's gone. I knew that death was not the end. It was just a passage, and that gave me immense peace. I started meditating, taking more care of my health, my spirit. I started to value little things more. The smile of a stranger on the street, the smell of rain, the taste of breakfast. Every moment became precious. And most importantly, I started spreading more love. I tried to be kinder, more understanding with everyone, because I had understood that, at the end of the day, that's what matters. The love we give, the good we do. This experience taught me that life is an incredible gift, and that we have to enjoy every second of it. We can't wait for the right moment to be happy, to do what we want. The time is now, always. After a while, I began to feel an overwhelming need to share what had happened to me. I couldn't keep that to myself, you know. I felt like I had an important message to convey. First, I told Anna. Man, I confess that I was scared of her thinking I had gone crazy. But do you know what is most incredible? She believed in me. He said that he had noticed such a huge change in me that something extraordinary could have happened. Encouraged by her reaction, I started telling my closest friends. Reactions were varied. Some thought I was crazy, others were fascinated. But everyone noticed how I had changed, how lighter, happier I was. Then I had an idea. Why not write about it? I started to put on paper everything that had happened, everything I had felt and learned. In the beginning, it was just for myself, you know, a way to organize your thoughts. But the more I wrote, the more I realized that it could help other people. I showed what I had written to some friends, and they encouraged me to publish it. John, this could change a lot of people's lives, they said. I was a little hesitant at first. After all, what would they think of me? The history teacher who had a near-death experience and is now writing about it. But then I thought, so what? If this can help someone see life in a different way, to value more what is important, why not? I decided to publish the book. Man, the repercussion was greater than I could have imagined. I received messages from people all over Brazil, people who had gone through similar experiences and never had the courage to talk about it. People who were afraid of death and found comfort in my words. It was amazing. I started giving lectures, participating in TV and radio programs. I, who was always shy, found myself speaking to huge audiences about life, death, and the meaning of it all. But you know what's cooler? See how this story touches people, how it makes them rethink their lives, their priorities. I receive messages from people saying that they have completely changed after reading my book or watching one of my lectures. This is priceless. Of course, there are people who don't believe it, who think it's all an invention, and that's okay. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. I'm not here to convince anyone. I just want to share what I experienced, what I learned, in the hope that it can bring a little more light to people's lives. At the end of the day, What I want is for people to understand that life is too precious to be wasted on things that don't matter, that love is the most powerful force there is, and that death is not the end. It is just a passage to something even more incredible. This experience changed my life in ways I could never have imagined. And if telling this story can change someone else's life, even if it's just one person, it will have been worth it. Because, at the end of the day, that's what life is about. Making a difference in the lives of others. To spread love. To live each day as if it were the last because, who knows, it could be.